Welcome back. 50 years ago this week, an estimated 500,000 people gathered on a dairy farm in Bethel, New York for a 3-day music festival that became the epic event known as Woodstock. WSRQ Operations Manager David Wolfe is here to tell us more. Welcome, David.
Radio's fine, too.
Yes.
Nice to see you, Joe. Nice to see you, Linda. Ladies.
So
Good to see you.
This is a big series, 26-part series WSRQ is working with, sponsored by Right Technology.
That's correct.
What will listeners hear?
Well, first of all, I have to mention Wayne Smith, who is our producer of the show and an incredible storyteller. You will hear some amazing stories about the bands that were there, also some of the bands that didn't show up for various reasons. It was a bit of a mud fest, as you may know. Jim Schaffner, by the way, is our executive producer as well. We have 26 vignettes, and what we're doing here is we're going to be playing them on the air on exactly the same day those bands performed 50 years ago to the day.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of history which we'll all have a chance to relive. Each vignette runs 4 to 5 minutes. We play them over 3.5 days. You know, this concert was supposed to be 3 days, but scheduling, bad weather, all kinds of issues stretched it into 3.5 days. Wow. So we want to really reflect what was happening at that time on the air on WSRQ.
Who was relatively unknown at the time, but obviously became bigger later?
Sean Anna, they were just out of high school. They couldn't even believe they were invited to the stage. And they still perform today, and they talk about their time on Woodstock. So you can see over 50 years the longevity here. And Santana would be another band that comes to mind 10 years after. But I think at the top of the list, I'd probably have to put Joe Cocker. If you've ever seen Joe Cocker do his rendition of With a Little Help from My Friends, there was somebody who quoted, who happened to be there, saying they looked like he was possessed. But it was great for his career, obviously, shot him into stardom with a lot of other bands as well. But the other thing you have to remember is there was a movie that came out after Woodstock. And many people say that, like for a band like Santana, and 10 years after, if you watch back and you see their performance, it really enhanced everything that happened when they were on stage live.
Logistically, it just sounds like a nightmare.
It was.
The venue, I know there were issues, surprise crowds. Tell us some of the things that had come up.
There are just so many stories, but first of all, you have to remember the venue that was chosen in Bethel, as you mentioned, was last minute. There were some towns that didn't want anything to do with this performance. There were laws created that towns said you can't do that here because they were worried about drug abuse, all kinds of issues, health reasons, etc. So at the last minute, it changed to a 600-acre dairy farm in Bethel. But that was at the last minute. There was no time to erect the fences, put up the ticket booths, have enough food, all those different things that should be in place. So as a result, initially, there were about 100,000 pre-sold tickets at $7 each. But the promoters decided it's too crazy, it's too short a notice, we're going to make it free. That had to be a stress factor beyond belief.
Oh,
This
yes.
is like the first fire festival.
For those 4 young gentlemen, right? I will tell you that after the event was over, there were over 70 lawsuits filed against the promoters. With not having ticket sales anymore and everybody being allowed to come in because there were folks just trampling over the fences that had been put up. And of course, when the word got out that it was free, that just brought in mobs of folks that were now coming in. So it was a very challenging situation. Now, you also had people trying to get there who just abandoned their cars in the streets. Police started closing off streets. So this became an issue for the bands that were also trying to get to the field in time. And they had to hire helicopters, but there were only so many helicopters. Remember, there were 32 different acts that had to be there.
Wow.
And Richie Havens ended up being the first act. That wasn't scheduled, but he was the first guy to show up.
Whoever gets here
boom,
first.
you're on, Richie, hit it. And he went for over 3 hours with encores. These stories just go on and on. We're going to tell all these stories this
it'll
weekend.
be so great to hear these. Now, we know that it was more than just about music. It was also the counterculture movement. Why do you think that was, what made it so significant?
Well, it was a time when youth wanted to really have their own direction as opposed to whatever their parents were telling them. So instead of wearing shoes, let's wear sandals. Diets changed into vegetarian. People really wanted to be their own person when they were out there, and Woodstock brought them together. It was like minds all coming together. And of course, you had the bands who were also talking about this subculture and let's proceed down this road versus what we've been told and brought up to think. And so with 500,000 people there, it was really all about peace and music and love and sharing. Very little security, and everybody got along. It was fantastic.
It'll be so wonderful to kind of relive and celebrate this anniversary with WSRQ Radio. You can listen to the special 26-part series, Woodstock, Ground Zero for Peace, on WSRQ Lecom Radio, starting tomorrow, Thursday, August 15th. It'll go through Sunday, August 18th. It will be streaming on srqfm.com. Just go to the Listen Live tab. You can also tune in on 106.9 FM in Sarasota and Bradenton, 95.9 FM in Venice, or on 1220 AM. When we come back, we have an unexpected way to save money. We'll tell you all about it.